let you know when the light comes on. We're ready to go.
All right. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome you to the regular meeting of the Milwaukee Planning Commission. Agendas and additional copies of staff reports are available on the city website at milwaukeeoregon.gov. You may locate them by navigating to the community calendar where tonight's meeting page is posted. If you have not reviewed the agenda, please do so. It contains important information about our process. If you wish to be included in the mailing list for decisions, or if you wish to provide public comment, please send an email to planning@milwaukeeoregon.gov. I will read the record. Written comments received during the meeting. Written comments should be concise. Each reading will be limited to 3 minutes. In order to be included in the meeting record, public comments must be received before the end of the applicable portion of the meeting. We follow the basic format listed on the back of the agenda. It includes all hearing procedural steps. We may vary from the process based on the specific circumstances of each hearing. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, or the first item rather, is approval of the meeting minutes from April 21st, 2021. Does anyone have corrections to make? Seeing no corrections being presented, I'll entertain a motion to approve the notes as presented.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from April 8th, 2021.
April 21st, sir.
I'm sorry. No, April 8th.
Is that right?
The agenda says April 8th.
The script says the 21st. Let's see.
And
the meeting minutes are
meeting
the 13th.
minutes says April 13th.
We were so close for the first time since I've been here. We were going to get it right. And then we missed up that. Okay. Almost so close. Okay. The Planning Commission minutes actually say April 13th. We will go back and just be sure that we have the right ones. Gosh darn it.
Is it the 8th, the 13th, and the 21st? I mean, maybe it's all three.
But that's wishful thinking. No, it's just one set this time.
I will withdraw my motion. Right. And we'll just rehash it out at the next meeting.
Okay.
Really, is that what we're going to do? Can someone present a motion based on April 13th? Or do you want to present a April 13th?
I'm looking.
Yeah,
April 13th was a Tuesday. That is correct.
April 13th, yeah.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from April 13th, 2021, and as is confirmed by staff.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye, seeing aye or raised hands by everybody. Let's move on. The minutes have been approved. Informational items from staff, please.
I do not have any informational items at this time.
All right. Let's move on then to audience participation. First, do we have any audience? Vera, is there anybody? We do. Okay, nice.
We have two folks in the audience. They're here for the hearings that are coming up, one for each.
Okay. Does it make sense then that I skip the audience participation piece? Okay. I agree. So let's move on then to the first hearing for tonight. The public hearing on 5840 Southeast Morris Street accessory structure spacing variance is called to order. The purpose of this hearing is to consider application number VR-2021-007. The purpose of the application is to request an accessory spacing variance on the property located at 5840 Southeast Morris Street. The applicant has the burden of proving the application is consistent with the City of Milwaukee's zoning subdivision ordinance, comprehensive plan, and applicable municipal code provisions, and the proposal conforms with all city's applicable criteria. I now ask staff to cite the zoning ordinance section where the criteria can be found.
Criteria can be found in section 19.1006, type 3 review. Section 19.301, low density residential zones, including the R7 zone. Section 19.402, natural resources. Section 19.600, off-street parking, not that one. Section 19.502, accessory structures, and section 19.911, variances.
All testimony and evidence must be directed towards the applicable substantive criteria. Failure to address the criterion or raise an issue with sufficient detail to allow Planning Commission an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue precludes appeal to the City Council based on the issue. Failure to raise constitutional or otherwise or other issues related to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow a response precludes any action for damage in circuit court. Any party withstanding may appeal the decision of the Planning Commission to the City Council. Persons withstanding are those who submit written comment or testify in person via Zoom. Conduct of the hearing. If you are here to testify, please remember to confine your remarks to the application and the relevant criteria and to avoid repetition and non-relevant information. If additional documents or evidence are provided by any party, the Commission may, if requested, allow a continuance or leave the record open to allow the parties a reasonable opportunity to respond. Any such continuance or extension shall be subject to the limitations of the 120-day rule, unless the continuance or extension is requested or agreed to by the applicant. Okay, let's move to conflicts of interest and site visit. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to abstain from this hearing?
No.
Seeing.
No.
Okay. All no's or otherwise not mentioned. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest? Please say no.
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 No. All no's. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to report an ex parte contact?
No. No.
No. Okay. Will any commissioner who has visited the site prior to the hearing please raise your hand now? I see one. Do any of the commissioners who raised their hand and have been to the site, did you speak to anybody at the site or know anything different from what is indicated in the staff report for this application?
No.
No. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge participation of any member of the Planning Commission? Vera?
I see no indication. Nope.
Okay. I'm going to go on. Jurisdictional issues. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission to hear this matter? Vera?
I don't see any. Nope.
Nope. Okay, it's your turn, Vera. I'll hand it over staff report.
Okay, thank you. Let me get to the PowerPoint presentation. All right. Okay, good evening, commissioners. Vera Collier, Senior Planner, here to present the staff report for variance number VR 2021-007. As you can see here on the site itself is outlined in red. The site is located at 5840 Southeast Morris Street. The site is approximately 13,055 square feet in size. It does contain mapped water quality resource area and is nearly entirely covered by mapped habitat conservation area and does contain the 100-year floodplain as well. This was indicated in the staff report. The surrounding area consists mostly of single-unit homes and a blend of unincorporated and unincorporated Clackamas County and annexed properties. Johnson Creek creates the rear boundary of the property. And so on the map that you see here, the areas that are sort of shaded in gray are the unincorporated properties in the city So those are still in Clackamas County. The property is zoned residential R7, and you can see here that it has the water quality resource area, that is that orange hatch, and then it does have some water quality resource area to the south, adjacent to Johnson Creek. As detailed in the staff report, the proposal is to allow this shed that was constructed as part of a larger home remodeling project to remain in its current location. It was constructed 47 inches, sorry, from the house. The code requires a minimum of 60 inches or 5 feet spacing between accessory structures and the exterior wall of any other structure on the property. As part of the application materials, the applicant explained kind of the design process for the project and didn't realize that accessory structures have additional code requirements beyond the fact that it didn't need a building permit because of its size. So during the final inspection, it was identified that the shed was here. It wasn't on the original site plan as part of the overall building permit for the project. And we had to go through this process in order to rectify the situation that it doesn't meet that spacing standard. As explained in the applicant's materials, the only real alternative, because it is sitting on, a concrete pad, it was sized and designed in order to fit, kind of nestled underneath the deck, would actually be to shorten the shed and cut it, and that would affect multiple portions of the shed, windows, vents, and so on. And the cost to do the work would be significant. So it was worth it to the applicant to go forward with this proposal to seek a variance to allow for its current location. The building department and the building code does not require the 5 feet spacing. Our zoning code, it used to, and so our zoning code was intended to reflect building spacing requirements. Over time, the building code has been updated and changed relative to these spacing requirements. Typically, these spacing requirements would only be affected if there was habitable space in the shed, which there is not. So those spacing requirements are not there. So our code has not kept up with the building code updates. So this is something that we'll need to kind of continue to add to our list of things that sort of it's a moving target when other codes get updated and we don't know. So we will likely take a look at this and want to fix this so that we are consistent with the building code as well. But that was sort of the history of that spacing requirement originally. So this is the request. The request is to allow for the shed to remain where it is right now. So the key issue that we bring up whenever we have a variance that is coming before you is, would approval of the variance result in any negative impacts? And staff has not identified any negative impacts. The shed was constructed underneath the deck, so it doesn't increase lot coverage, and it does not increase any disturbance in the mapped habitat conservation area. So there aren't any additional impacts to the mapped resource areas that are on the site because it's actually underneath that deck, as you saw in the photographs. The approval criteria for a variance include an alternatives analysis and the finding by the Planning Commission that the proposed variance avoids or minimizes impacts to any surrounding properties. And that they would be mitigated to the extent practicable. Again, staff has not identified any impacts from the proposed variance, and staff did not receive any comments from any neighbors related to the variance. So no surrounding properties commented or expressed any concern about the variance itself. So staff's recommendation is to approve the variance and adopt the recommended findings to allow the shed to be 43 inches from the house rather than the minimum of 60 inches. The Planning Commission has a few decision-making options as usual, which is to approve the application with the recommended findings. That is the staff recommendation. You could approve the application with modified findings. We'll need to read those into the record. You could deny the application with new findings of denial, or you could continue the hearing. August 20th is the 120-day deadline for the application, and the applicant is here virtually and is here to answer any questions, but I'm happy to answer any questions for you based on the staff report, if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you, Vera. Do any of the commissioners have questions for staff? I'd like to start, Vera. I think the 47 that's quoted is incorrect on that maybe second slide. It should read 43.
It is 43. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. I have a question for you, Vera. I recognize that a permit is not required if this accessory structure is under 200 square feet. However, would the deck have been permitted had the jurisdiction reviewed the fact that there was a structure underneath the deck and potentially causing a situation where there could be a hazard underneath the deck, and the deck could potentially in a fire situation if it had started in the shed?
From my conversation with the building official, the shed being underneath the deck does not create an issue for her. I'm sorry, for the building code. So it would have been permitted as part of the overall project anyway. So from a building code standpoint, it would have been fine. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from the commissioning agent? Commissioners, rather.
Adam and Greg have their hands up.
Do they? Oh, I don't see them.
Yep.
Okay.
Commissioner Causerbody and Commissioner Hemer both have their hands up.
I don't see the little hand icon this time for some reason. So you're probably, and from here on out today, you're probably have to assume that you got to let me know. Commissioner Causerbody, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate the staff report. I just had a question in regards to finding that 60 inches code. So if, as a homeowner, if you're building, if you know that under 200 square feet, you don't need a permit, how else would you be able to find out that you needed it 60 inches away from the property? Like, where would you find that information? Because I, as a homeowner, I'd probably assume the same thing. No building code, no permit. So then I can pretty much.
Nope. It's a great question. We work with the building department because we want to make sure that, you know, we're sending people to the building department for things that we might not oversee and vice versa. The building department consistently tells people that, you know, this and this and this may not need a permit. You should talk to the planning department about what their requirements might be. In this particular case, there is a handout for sheds for residential properties that indicates, you know, what needs a permit, what doesn't. And there is I know it's in red. It might be in bold as well, in bold type, that sends folks to the planning department to confirm any requirements that we have. So it doesn't specifically say the 60 inches or the spacing because they don't know. You know, we also calculate lot coverage as part of, you know, accessory structures. So the building department has put on that handout for sheds specifically to send folks to the planning department to double check if there are any other requirements that they might need to meet. So that's how we try to communicate together for folks to send people, because we certainly don't want to create a situation where someone doesn't know anything. So we try to send folks to the other department to make sure they have their questions answered, and we double check everything. But so this one in particular fell through the cracks for the applicant.
Okay, so this was, okay, thank you for that. So was this more of like the applicant didn't go to the right department to find out this information, or he wasn't given the right information to approach those departments?
The handout that, you know, was created for sheds does indicate that they should speak with the planning department, but they missed it. So they didn't. Yeah.
Okay, who else? Commissioner Hemer, were you the other one?
Yes.
Yeah, so maybe I'm a little confused. What drives the building code? Is it the planning code? Is it the comprehensive plan? Or is it something totally independent of everything else?
The building code is the building code. It does its own thing over here. And we want to make sure that we don't conflict with the building code, certainly. So there are certain things that, for example, our zoning code can't tell people how to build certain things in a certain way because the building code kind of drives that. We can incentivize things, like green building standards is a good example. Things have to be built to the building code, but we can incentivize things like that. In this case, there were spacing standards at some point between structures, and so our code tried to reflect that as well. But over time, things have changed, or the kinds of things that need to be spaced in a certain way has changed in the building code. So our zoning code hasn't kept up with that.
Who drives the building code? Is it state? Is it local municipality, or?
It's the state, I believe. I mean, there's a commission or building.
So there was a
commissions,
statewide change and with our local planning department.
Right.
And okay, all right.
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
that's what I wanted to know. All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, moving on then. Have we received any information, any correspondence on this matter other than those that have been included in the meeting packet, Vera?
We have not, no.
Okay. Applicant testimony. Would the applicant or representative like to comment? If so, let's enter them into the meeting.
Okay, yep. This is Steve Klingman. Steve, I've promoted you over to panelist, so you are able to present or answer any questions whenever you're ready.
So Steve, if you have anything to present, now would be your chance. Otherwise, we can go toward questions that the commissioners may have.
No, I'm happy to answer any questions. I can address Adam's question about the handout, which was that, yeah, there is a big red line there. There is a major echo, which makes it hard to talk.
Oh, we are not hearing the echo. So I would say if you are listening, you want to maybe mute your computer.
If I mute the computer, then I can't hear you. So I'll just have to kind of move in and out of this, but that is better. Thank you. Anyway, this was a complex project because of the HCA and flood zone requirements and all kinds of different things. And I really tried to stay on top of it. The shed seemed like the easy thing, and using the shed sheet was really a practical thing. Thought I had it totally down. And had I known, had that 60-inch rule been on the sheet, I absolutely would have put it 60 inches from the house. I would have sacrificed the aesthetic of the 43-inch old upper deck to move everything out a little bit. It really, what's 17 inches among friends? So it wouldn't have been a big deal at all. So this is an expensive and kind of heartrending mistake. But I do appreciate Vera's and everybody else's encouragement to make the application for the variance, and happy to answer your questions.
Thank you, Steve. Are there any commissioners who have questions for the applicant? Seeing none. Okay, Steve, appreciate your time tonight. If you want to stay on for any questions or comment that might have, I think we can move on. Vera, are there any other attendees tonight?
Not for this matter, no.
Okay, then Laura, I'm going to skip support and opposition and neutral testimony and go directly into whether the Planning Commission has any questions for the testimony, which I'm seeing none. So then we're going to move past rebuttal because there would be none, and I will then close the hearing. So the public testimony portion of this hearing, VR 2021-007-5840 Southeast Moore Street Accessory Structure Spacing Variance, is now closed. It's an opportunity now for the commission to discuss. Are each one of you ready? I hope so. Anybody want to lead? Commissioner
Sure, I'll go.
Edge?
Thank you, Chair Roosevelt. So I think this is a really reasonable request. I think that honestly, the aesthetic of it being slightly closer to the house, is ultimately a better end result than if he had followed the zoning code, which again is inconsistent and with the building code, and also I guess. Well, I'm losing my words, but it's it's stale code that needs to be updated, and it's obsolete. There we go. That's the word I was looking for. So, really, there's just no problems with this. It doesn't further impact the HCA. It doesn't create any problems for any neighbors. It just seems like it's really just a technicality that he's even here dealing with this at all. And I'm sorry to you that you had to go through this added expense and time to get this approval. But I appreciate that you did so. And also what you're doing and trying to be respectful of the HCA and everything. So, anyway, I agree with the findings, the draft findings as presented from staff and distributed with our meeting packet. Happy to vote in favor of approving with the findings that are distributed.
I will take a motion for as much. Commissioner Edge, if you'd like to make a motion.
I will move that we approve application VR-2021-007 and adopt the findings and conditions of approval as distributed by staff.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. All commissioners are in favor and approved, so I will move on. Congratulations, Steve. And thank you for coming tonight. I wish we followed the rules of the NFL here, and upon a second review, you weren't taxed some type of timeout. But
well, thank you all for your consideration. I appreciate it, and for your service.
All right. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Appeal rights. If anybody wishes to appeal the decision to City Council, you complete your application stating the grounds for your appeal within 15 days of the mailing of notice of decision. Please see planning staff for details. Moving on then, the public hearing of 11503 Southeast Wood Avenue accessory structure size variance is called to order. The purpose of the hearing is to consider application number VR2021-008. The purpose of the application is to request an accessory structure size variance on the property located at 11503 Southeast Wood Avenue. The applicant has the burden of proving the application is consistent with the City of Milwaukee's zoning, subdivision ordinance, comprehensive plan, and applicable municipal code provisions, and that the proposal conforms with all of the city's applicable criteria. I now ask staff to cite the zoning ordinance section where the criteria can be found.
Section 19.301, low density residential zone, R7, section 19.502, accessory structures, and section 19.911, variances.
Thank you. All testimony and evidence must be directed toward the applicable substantive criteria. Failure to address a criterion or raise an issue with sufficient detail to allow the Planning Commission an adequate opportunity to respond to each issue precludes appeal to the City Council based on that issue. Failure to raise constitutional or other issues related to the proposed conditions of approval with sufficient detail to allow a response for damages in circuit court. Any party withstanding may appeal the decision of the Planning Commission to the City Council. Persons withstanding are those who submit written comments or testify in person via Zoom. If you are here to testify, please remember to confine your remarks to the application and the relevant criteria, and to avoid repetition and non-relevant information. If additional documents or evidence are provided by any party, the commission may, if requested, allow a continuance or leave record open to allow the parties a reasonable opportunity to respond. Any such continuance or extension shall be subject to the limitation of the 120-day rule unless the continuance or extension is requested or agreed to by the applicant. Conflicts of interest in site visit. Does any member of the Planning Commission wish to abstain from this hearing? Please raise your hand. Seeing no hands raised, does any member of the Planning Commission wish to declare an actual or potential conflict of interest? Seeing no hand raised, does any member of the Planning Commission wish to report on an ex parte contact? Seeing no one, will any commissioner who has visited the site, since none of you have, well, actually, I take that back. Please raise your hand if you have seen or visited the site. We have one. Thank you, Commissioner Massey. Did any of those commissioners who visited the site speak to anyone at the site or know anything different than what's indicated in the package?
No.
No, thank you. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the participation of any member of the Planning Commission? Vera?
I see
No.
none. No.
Okay. Does any member of the audience wish to challenge the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission to hear this matter? No. Thank you, Vera. All right, we'll proceed to the staff report.
I'm going to share my screen so you can see the PowerPoint. Good afternoon, commissioners. My name is Janine Gates. I am an assistant planner. We are going to talk about Master File VR 2021008 for an accessory structure size variance. This is the address 11503 Southeast Wood Avenue. It's highlighted in this red line. The site is approximately 36,000 square feet in size and is developed with a single family home, 1-car garage, and 3 accessory structures. The surrounding areas consist of single family units on all sides with a mix in lot ranging from 7,000 square feet to over 38,000 square feet. And this house is on the larger size. This lot is on the larger size. The zoning for this lot is R7. And their proposal is to allow an accessory structure, in this case, a shed that is more than 1,500 square feet. The shed that they are proposing is 1,680 square feet. It's a type 3 variance is required for this application. The applicant's submittal materials described the conditions that influenced their decision to propose a 1,680 square feet accessory structure, which is 180 square feet more than the maximum requirement. Its design and size were carefully considered to minimize any disturbance to the neighborhood. The applicant's proposed accessory structure will match the design of their home and is similar in size and accessory structures in their neighborhood, which these pictures are from accessory structures from their neighbors. The only real alternative to the variance would be the applicant keeping 2 accessory structures that are not in good shape or construct 2 smaller accessory structures that are permitted in the code. One key issue that we had to address was, would approval of the variance result in any negative impacts? Staff has not identified any negative impacts. The shed was constructed with consideration of the code, such as lot coverage and vegetation, as well as keeping in mind the sizes of accessory structures in their neighborhood. Here's the approval criteria to offer some alternatives for the Planning Commission to see, to avoid or minimize impacts of surrounding properties or have any public benefits. And then we didn't receive any comments for this application. And the staff recommendation is to approve and adopt the recommended findings to allow a 1,680 square feet accessory structure. And this is the Planning Commission decision-making options. The first one is approve the application with the recommended findings. This is what staff recommends. Approve the application with modified findings. Those modifications must be read into the record. Deny the application with new findings of denial, continue the hearing, and the 120-day deadline for this application is August 20th. And that concludes my presentation. Chair, you're on mute.
Well, I said thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Apologies. Vera, I'm imagining we still have no attendees. So in terms of testimony.
No, there is a representative for this application that is here. Yes.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that. And we have no correspondence, as Janine had said. So this is the opportunity then for the applicant to comment. Can you want to enter them into the meeting? And you know what? I was just noticing, Laura, we would want the applicant to state their name and city. Is that correct? I don't think we did that on the last one, and that I think is missing from the script. So Mary, if you can hear us, can you please state your first and last and your city of residence?
Mary Tong, Milwaukee.
Great. All right, Mary, this is your opportunity to present any information to the commission. If you have nothing to present, we could just move on to questions for you. It's your choice.
I have nothing to present.
Okay, that's just fine. So then we're gonna hang on here for some other processes. Vera, imagining we don't have other attendees here in terms of testimony and support or opposition or neutral?
No, we do not.
Okay. So we'll not have a rebuttal, and we will just move to closing the public hearing. The public testimony portion of this hearing, VR-2021-008-11503 Southeast Wood Avenue accessory structure size variance, is now closed. The commission, are you ready for discussion?
Chair, I have a question for staff, if I may.
You do?
Yes, and it's a technical question, and it kind of raises the same question that I had last meeting. There is a bathroom in their plans, right? Doesn't this make this then an ADU and not an ASU? And what is the difference?
So I don't know what an ASU is.
An accessory structure.
Oh, sorry. Yes. This is not an ADU because they're not proposing someone to live in the shed. They are using the shed to primarily store different personal belongings, as well as using it as an art studio. No one will be living in this space, which I think is a big difference between an accessory structure and an ADU.
Vera?
If I may, just a clarifying comment to Janine's point. An ADU is defined as a space built to habitable standards that has a restroom or sanitary facilities, sleeping quarters, as well as a full kitchen, which includes a stove or a 220 service. So it's not a dwelling unit unless it has all three of those things. So it's pretty common for folks to have an accessory structure like this, a shed or a shop or something that has a bathroom in it, but that's not considered an accessory dwelling unit. It's not built, and it doesn't meet our definition of a dwelling, and it's not built to those standards either. Just to clarify. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other question or comments from the commission? Commissioner Edge?
Yeah, I was just wondering if the zoning code was explicit about the purpose of the maximum size standard for an accessory structure.
That's a good question. I was not able to find anything that said why it had to be the 1,500 explicitly. For you?
I don't know the history of this section of the code, but it's not identified within the code as to why. It's sort of, we have 3 types of accessory structures by size. And there is in the column that goes with accessory structures for type C, which is, this larger size. It calls out, if you have a larger property, you kind of automatically get a certain size, within that, but the maximum is 1,500 square feet, and it doesn't talk about why that is. There may be some legislative history that we can find to kind of try to understand why that was the magic number, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head. No.
Thank you.
Chair, this is Robert. I have a question. I'll start with the staff, but I may have to go to the applicant. I read where there was an intention to bring down a couple of the existing structures on the property.
That is correct.
I did not see that in the conditions of approval. Did I miss something?
I would have to go back and check. I know it was either in the findings or that, but I can check and make sure.
Okay, I'd like to know that before we proceed.
Okay. I am checking that right now.
If I may, Chair Losfeld, so it doesn't sound like there were conditions of approval originally proposed for this application, but if I may, it sounds like Commissioner Massey would like to add a condition of approval that those subsidiary structures that were identified on the site plan to be demolished must be demolished as part of this approval for the variance. Do I have that correct?
Well, I would like for that to be part of the discussion, I think.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amongst the commissioners, yeah.
Do any of the commissioners have anything to add to that?
I guess my question would be if the accessory structures that are already on the site remained, the ones that were proposed to be demolished, would the construction of the new accessory structure put them at odds with any of the city code? So, I mean, is there a material difference between them leaving the sheds up as they are or taking them down in terms of being compliant?
I'm sorry, I missed your question because I was looking at what Commissioner Massey was asking me, which I have the answer to your question. That demolished the 2 accessory structure was in the staff report in the findings. So that was there. And then Vice Chair Massey, Edge, I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
Yeah, happy to repeat. So what I was wondering is if the 2 accessory structures that were proposed to be demolished were not in fact demolished, and the new proposed structure was constructed as proposed, would they then be in conflict with any existing city codes like site coverage, the maximum site coverage, or anything like that?
I wouldn't know the answer to that because I don't know the current size of the 2 accessory structures. So I can't determine if they're over lot coverage or not.
I guess we could have a condition that was driven off of that. Just making sure that whatever the end result is, that they, before they're, given the whatever the final inspection approval at the end, that they are just not in conflict with any of the site standards. That would make me comfortable. So we don't need to do anything extra on top of what the code would already mandate, but we do want them to be compliant with the code.
Okay.
Okay, do any other commissioners have any comment to add? Commissioner Massey, would you like to provide a motion?
Well, let me, before let me ask Commissioner Edge, I mean, should we have a condition of approval that says that, back to your point, I mean, should the condition of approval say something along the lines of, I'm trying to think of the right words. Maybe you have the right words. I don't know.
If I may, Commissioner Massey.
Yeah, go ahead.
I believe if you look at finding number 7, it talks about as proposed. The intent behind the application as proposed is they are intending to remove the 2 accessory structures and build this one as a replacement. I think it would probably be advisable to, I don't know whether I would advise it, but I think it would be acceptable for you to condition your approval on the removal of those structures, as that's the proposal in front of you. And you could certainly ask the applicant. I don't think the applicant is going to be to object to that condition, as that's part of their proposal. They can certainly articulate why they don't want to do that condition if that's if they don't.
Well, I mean, I don't want to impose a hardship on the applicant. I mean, as long as the buildings were, taken down within 12 months of completion of the new one or something like that,
Right, and the specifics of those other accessory structures haven't been analyzed because they weren't part of the proposal. So yeah. I don't think Assistant Planner Gates or Vera are going to be able to comment necessarily on that while we're on the fly here.
Well, maybe can I direct a question at the applicant?
Yes.
Mary, you've heard our discussion about the taking down of the other 2 structures. I mean, do you have any thoughts on what we have been discussing and what your plans were?
I think that I can put your mind at ease that the location and the size of the structure, in order to make it work, both of those auxiliary structures must come down prior to starting construction of the new shop.
We should have started the questioning with you, Mary.
Yeah, I didn't know how to jump in, or I would have saved you guys a lot of trouble.
You're very kind, yeah.
Commissioner Massey, would you like to form a motion?
Sure. I think I would like to propose a motion that we approve the applicant with the findings and conditions as written.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion. All those in favor, please state aye.
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 All commissioners are in favor. Thank you very much, Mary. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you.
And thank you, Janine. Okay. Moving on.
Chair.
If anybody,
There you go. Thank you.
I was going to move on to appeal rights. Did you have something to add? You going to help me stay on track? I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Okay, if anyone wishes to appeal the decision of to the City Council, you must complete an application stating the grounds of your appeal within 15 days of mailing of the notice of decision. Please see planning staff for details. All right, we can move on to work session item. Next on the agenda is an update on the comprehensive plan implementation project presented by our very own Vera.
Thank you very much. I'll make this quick. Have a brief update for you because I can't let a meeting go by without an update on this project. All right. Thanks very much. Again, quick update on the project and where we are with this. Again, just another reminder of the policy mandates for this project to increase the supply of middle housing and provide housing choice throughout the city, increasing tree canopy and preserve existing trees, and to manage parking, residential parking, to enable middle housing and to protect trees. For the project schedule, as I indicated, I think at the last meeting where I was here, we're in the stage of draft code and maps. We're about to hit a milestone where we will be submitting draft code that is compliant with House Bill 2001, as well as draft tree code to DLCD for their deadline for the grant funding that we received for a portion of this project. So we see this again as a milestone in the project, that we've sort of gotten to this point where we have this draft code that we'll be submitting to DLCD for the grant. That's not the end of the project by any means, and we'll be moving forward from this point over the next couple of weeks, starting into what we're calling the code adoption process. But I can highlight for you some of the key code amendments that are sort of in the package that will be going to DLCD. And again, this will be part of this next phase of the code adoption process. We will be presenting materials to all of the NDAs. Well, 2 NDAs are not meeting in June. Lake Road and Island Station do not meet in June or for the rest of the summer, but we will be meeting with the remaining NDAs throughout June to give them an update on where we are and to direct folks to the Engage Milwaukee website, where we will have kind of a final, we're calling it an open house, but it's sort of an informational platform to provide updates on where we are with this project and how folks can participate in the project going forward. We also will have an article. There's an article in the June pilot that just came out last week, and there will be an article in the July pilot as well to direct folks to the Engage Milwaukee site. But some of the key amendments that are sort of the big ticket items as part of the code amendments, again, is this proposal to consolidate our 8 residential zones to 2 zones. And this ties to our comprehensive plan policy about providing equitable distribution of housing choices throughout the city. So this map reflects what that will look like with our two remaining residential zones. Some of the things that we discussed at our last meeting related to housing talks about the minimum lot size or the lot size and the various housing types that will be permitted on those lot sizes. We had a great discussion at the last meeting about this, and these are some of the details that we'll be able to work through because I'll be at, I think, all of the meetings in July and August with you folks to go through these packages of details as we start to fine tune the code. And so we'll be able to really get into the details about this as we move forward into that code adoption process. But for now, this is kind of where we've landed related to what housing types will be permitted on what size lots. Again, talking about the notion of middle housing types being permitted as attached or detached units. We talked about that, and we would still be looking at development standards to apply to those various housing types to keep this, as we've been calling it, a livability code. And kind of this idea of, yes, we're expanding the housing types that will be permitted throughout our residential zones, but we're still maintaining sort of that overall kind of feel for how for the housing. So no, not the 3 stories that we're seeing in various sections of Portland. For example, we will still be using the development standards like lot coverage and landscaping, setbacks, building height, side yard height plane, all of those things to help create what that box for the housing and how what it will generally look like and how it will fit onto the property itself. This is a a graphic that was prepared by one of the consultants on the team that shows how a triplex might be configured on a 5,000 square foot lot. Just as an illustrative example, it is to scale. So it is showing how a triplex might fit into an existing neighborhood with single unit homes. It does include, though, that some of the parking is accommodated on the street, but it is maintaining all of the minimum setbacks that are currently required. So just as a graphic, just to kind of show how things can fit onto lots in the neighborhoods. And we will be using more of these kinds of graphics as we continue through the process. It's important for folks to be able to get a sense of what these things, of how these middle housing types will, the look and feel, within existing neighborhoods. There are a lot of examples of middle housing throughout the region and throughout the country, but it's also, I think, really useful for folks like the public to be able to see generally illustrative examples on real properties, in existing neighborhoods in the city. So we'll be using these kinds of visuals throughout the process as we go forward. As far as parking, where we've landed so right now is 1 space per unit required as per the House bill, that the parking space can be in the driveway or in the setback. So trying to free up some space on the site and removing one of those constraints that folks have, both in creating new housing and also in being able to convert their existing garages into living space. And they're up for discussion as sort of part of the continuing conversations that we'll be having with you through our work sessions throughout the summer, is allowing alternatives to parking location. And like the street, like a car park, in a neighborhood, and using that parking modification process to be able to get creative about how parking can work for these properties. And as far as trees, there is a draft code that has been worked through with the tree board. Generally, it will apply to residential development projects where new dwelling units are added. It will also apply as a non-development tree removal process as well. So tree preservation and protection will be required, including planting and replacement required as part of development projects. And there is language that talks about non-development tree removal requiring permits, replacement and mitigation requirements as well. There will be some exemptions within that, certainly for certain kinds of trees, nuisance species, or if they're dead and that sort of thing. So there's a whole list of that. And then we will have those details will be part of the package that will get submitted to DLCD, and then will be available on the Engage Milwaukee website. Peter Passarelli, the Public Works Director, and his team will be working through sort of a rollout process with the tree code. Specifically, it is related, of course, to our work as part of the housing piece of it, but it also kind of lives on its own as well, because it does affect properties that aren't doing any kind of development. So, it's going to be running sort of intersection and parallel with our process to make sure that folks are aware of the tree code and what its requirements will be and how it will affect residential properties in the city. Next steps. So this is our circus slide of all of the things that will be happening between now and December. So again, we're here in June. We will have draft code and maps for the DLCD submittal for the grant package. And so we'll have this sort of draft stuff that we will be working through throughout the summer, work sessions with you folks. We have a CPIC meeting coming up next week on the 17th. We have another open house. We have the NDA presentations, and then the pilot article to sort of get folks kind of up to speed on where we are with this process and where we're going with the process. Throughout the summer, again, we'll be having the work sessions with you folks. We will be collecting written public comments, and we will be tracking all of those comments. Generally, that's something that we don't do until the hearing process, but we want to make sure that folks are able to participate in this, in the workshop of these sessions as we work through the final details of the code that we'll get to the hearings in the fall. We have added a CPIC meeting in July. where we will be talking about some additional details to kind of tweak this code as we kind of perfect it for Milwaukee. There will be, of course, Engage Milwaukee posts on the webpage, as well as pilot articles. I've signed up for a couple of dates to be at the farmers market, to be at the city, booth, to be able to provide information to people so that folks know that, we've sort of got this base code or this draft code, and now we're working through the process throughout the summer. Once we get into the fall, we will be posting our 35-day public notice in September once we've workshopped the code with the commission through the summer. So we'll land with this final draft code, again, collecting written public testimony, tracking all of these things in a spreadsheet. Again, NDA meetings, pilot articles, postcards, social media, all of that, because now we're getting into the actual public hearing process in October. And then moving into the city council process in December. So hopefully for Christmas, we will have the gift of a new code that will provide all kinds of housing opportunities throughout the city. So that concludes my presentation, but I just wanted to, again, get you up to speed and prepped for the summer that we will be spending together in work sessions talking about housing code. It's going to be great. I'm looking forward to it. So, but I'm happy to answer any questions on where we are kind of right now. At this point, we're sort of in a race a little bit with the clock in fine tuning the draft code that we'll be submitting to DLCD. So that will be going at submitting at the end of next week. And then we can kind of reset for the next phase of the process. But happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Vera. Does the commission have any questions for Vera?
Commissioner Hemer.
Oh, Commissioner Hemer.
I have a question, and then I have a statement. So my question is I think it's valuable for the city to be able to have, especially the October, November meetings, to be able to be held in public, or what I mean in person. There are a wide variety of people that do not have internet access, or maybe not have cable TV, or maybe not have YouTube to be able to participate in this. I think that, and so I don't know if there is a strict timeline after you hand it off to the DLCD to be able to start having your public meetings for it. But I certainly would encourage staff to think about, well, maybe the timeline should coincide with whenever we're allowed to meet again in person or in a public space to be able to hold these. And then, so my question was, is there actually a time after you hand it off to the DLCD that you have to have a decision made?
No.
Okay.
So no. So this is strictly for draft code being submitted for completion and compliance with the grant that we received, which was, and the final deliverable for that, including all of the things that we've been doing this whole time, is what we're calling adoption ready code. And what that means is that it's in a format and it complies with House Bill 2001, and that's what it will be, but it will have draft stamped all over it, and our grant administrators know that this is draft code. They know that now we have to go into the actual code adoption process. So we will have that draft code for DLCD for compliance with the grant, and then that's why we sort of have this next 6 months kind of mapped out with work sessions with the commission, and then to have the actual hearings not start until October. So to your point, Commissioner Hemer, about having meetings in person, I think the hope would be that, in-person meetings will be happening sooner than that, but the idea that our public hearings with full public testimony and all of that would be happening in the fall. And so fingers crossed that we're in a place where we can have those in-person meetings at that point. Yeah.
And Vera, if I can just make one clarification, I just wanted to add that while in fact we don't have another deadline with DLCD after we turn in this code, we'll be working through it, like Vera said, hopefully through the end of the year, but we do have a state requirement to have the code adopted fully by June 2022, just to be clear. So we have time, but we're hoping to get it adopted by the end of this year.
So, yeah, I would hope, I would hope that the city would look at this to at least for city council, when people bring this, that they are able to meet in person. I personally would like it for the planning commission too. I just don't want to leave, even if it's a hybrid Zoom type situation. I just don't want to leave anybody out because of barriers of income or a chosen lifestyle that they don't want to be linked up to the world. You understand what I mean by that? And then my comment is, and I think Commissioner Edge and I are on the same page about this. My comment is you've all heard my laissez-faire attitude about let anything. But part of it, we need to develop a residential development plan. And I've been using this word incentive as a faucet to turn on and off things. But the reason is that there are limitations to the city. So you can only get so many toilets in until the water treatment plant overflows. You can only have so many density until you have to hire so many more fire and police and all this, right? So, and then there's the economic factor too of your balance between single family residents and accessory dwelling units, and what does that mean for revenues in the future, and what does that mean for an overall economic and a wide range of variety of people living in your city. And so that's what I mean kind of by a plan. If we set out the rules and we say we allow everything, that means everything could be a triplex. Well, right now, people want triplexes. Back in 2008, nobody would buy a triplex. So you could end up with a whole abandoned city because of the limited house choice that you have, because there isn't large enough. Right now, people want smaller things. But, when the markets aren't so hot, larger has a tendency to sell. Condos are the least wanted in a buyer's market, right? Condos go first, duplexes, triplexes, and those kind of things go second. So we need to, and I hope that we're going to think about this just like we did with our community vision and our environmental action plan that we put together. This is kind of the same thing that, hey, you know what, let's have it together, a residential plan. Let's talk about, how much density can we afford in the city? And then that way we know when to turn on and off the faucets, right? And instead of changing the code, which is a laborious and expensive process, my idea would be, well, you turn it on and off with incentives. And we talked about this during the comp plan. I know Commissioner Edge talked about this. Let's have plans kind of put in place so that we don't overload systems or underload systems too. There's, we need to be smart about, and this is about, developing your residential area to make it livable and habitable for everybody and all affordable. And so I guess I'm calling a residential density plan, or, however you kind of want to call that, but have I said enough?
Vera, do you have anything currently that represents that or that is even a nod in that direction?
The housing needs analysis.
Yeah. Housing needs analysis, housing production strategy, but the housing needs analysis is what sort of identifies what we need and how much of it that we need. I think part of this conversation, and will be, there will be an update to that Laura can speak to if we need to, but part of the way we need to balance that though is that we do have the state requirement of where and how housing needs to be permitted too. So kind of how, I don't know, we won't have as much flexibility in sort of restricting things either. And it's sort of it's an over time kind of development, pattern as well. I mean, just because you can build a triplex on your property doesn't mean everyone will, as an example, either. So, but we should understand that it can happen, and sort of understand kind of the overall spectrum of development that's possible. But yeah, the housing needs analysis will get to a lot of those things as well, sort of what we need, how much of it we need, what are the housing types, that kind of thing. And I know Laura's going to be heading up that process.
Right, but the housing needs analysis, right, just now, right, basically says, well, this is the type of housing that is needed, but it doesn't take into the community as a whole, the wastewater treatment, right? We should have a plan with Happy Valley or all the users of that wastewater. How much junk can we get into there until it overflows and we have to build a new one? Well, that puts a huge restraint onto your system. The amount of police, the amount of fire, right? If we have a standard for how many police per population, and what happens if we double the population with our housing? Those are and that's why I call, residential development plan, where the housing needs analysis is just basically somebody saying, well, you need more housing because there's so much of a population that needs this type of housing. It doesn't take into effect those, those other local community factors that are going to end up costing all residents of Milwaukee because they got to get fixed and it will be an emergency. And it's not cheap to build a new sewer power.
Well, we are required, we are doing infrastructure plans. So we have a wastewater master plan, we have a sewer master plan, we have a transportation system plan, and all of those plans that we're doing project out between 20, 30, 40 years. And we do have projections, population projections, and we look at the full build out of the city. And so we know that what we'll need to build when, based on how much development comes on, we make a plan for that. So we do have a series of infrastructure plans that address what you're talking about. Does it address police and fire? Not those particular issues, but those would get triggered as more population comes, then you would have to add more services to accommodate that need. But we do have lots of infrastructure planning things in place right now, in process right now, that we're looking at all those things.
Yeah, I would just hope that with the gumption that we had with the, and now I had it in my head and now I can't remember, but the environmental plan that we put together, the climate action plan, that we had that much gumption because we used all that information and we put that all into a plan, right? And I wish that we would use all of the information that we have and we can call it a livability plan. And it would be maybe a unique thing instead of, we've already learned what happens tonight when two independent parties start to make up ideas and people forget to look at each other's work. So I would love to see it all kind of conversed into one where we can follow this action so that when the faucet needs to be turned on and off, it's almost an automatic kicker. And Commissioner Edge, we talked about this during the comp plan, that, it'd be nice to have some triggers that would kind of give us signals to where, you need to kind of keep going or to expand it, right? However that is.
Laura, can you speak to whether or not there's a process in place to converge that information and start to understand how they weave together?
I don't think there's a process in place to understand how it weaves together. I just know that we do all of the infrastructure, and it kind of comes together, I guess I would say maybe in the CIP, in the capital improvement projects, because what we'll do is we get all of our big master plans together, and then we look at our projected growth, and then we kind of prioritize what needs to get built along with how we're building out the city. And that's kind of that exercise of prioritizing all the projects that get put into. So all the little bits and pieces of the plans that we do get put into the CIP, and then based on our needs, our infrastructure needs as we grow, they get prioritized. So that's kind of where it lives. It doesn't live in kind of this overarching plan that Commissioner Hamer is talking about, but there are all of the bits and pieces. It might just not manifest itself in the livability plan, but we do have all of the pieces feeding in to address our population growth. And while I think it's an interesting idea, Commissioner Hamer, we have to do all of the other plans before we can do the big plan, because we have a long list of plans that we need to get caught up to do, which is, right, we have this work plan that goes on for, I don't know, the next 7 years, which includes the housing needs analysis and the transportation system plan, and the engineering department is doing the water plan and the sewer plan. So there are all these planning projects that are going on to get us to where we need to be, but I don't know when it could all converge in one place besides the CIP. But I hear you, and we can keep it on our radar as something that we might get to explore sometime in the future.
Vera, I have a question for you, and it's something that's come up in public comment quite a bit, which is the schedule for this implementation or adoption of the code has always been questioned as, you know, being fairly fast-paced. And in particular, during a pandemic, which, as we know, has certain challenges to folks being able to be a part of this process. So why are we trying to get this done and by December 2021 if we have until 2022 to actually get it completed? Why not allow the community the opportunity to get involved, you know, and hopefully a post-pandemic world?
It's a good question. I think I would sort of start it a little bit at the beginning of when this project was sort of thought about and started. And, you know, it was given to us as a goal from City Council, you know, that housing was a goal, that it was the #1 priority, and that we were to move forward with getting middle housing moved forward, and that the housing policies and so on from the comprehensive plan took, you know, front and center stage and were to move forward. So we started with this last summer, and, you know, and moved forward through this process. Yes, in the pandemic, it was very challenging with, you know, trying to get folks to participate in all of the different engagement strategies and tactics that we tried without being able to meet in person to get us to this point where we have this draft code, again, going to DLCD as part of this grant process. But that's also, you know, as a way of responding to concerns like that, we're taking the next 6 months, you know, to get through that process. So it's not, this is, again, a milestone with this code. And now we're pulling this through with multiple work sessions, with community conversations, with, you know, with you folks, with written testimony, all of these things until we're not starting the hearings until October, when folks can participate, certainly. And as, you know, I tried to indicate within the slide that we're going to be accepting all kinds of written testimony during the work session portion of this process, which generally we don't do, so that we can be tracking comments and sort of, again, using this sort of more as a workshop to kind of get through the summer to get to this code that's in October. To the extent that we would like to be kind of ahead of the game with getting this code ready, I guess we would be 6 months early from when our requirement. We are required to have this code in place and adopted by June 30th of 2022. So we will be 6 months ahead of that process, with the understanding that it was a goal for the city to move forward with this kind of process and to be able to have these housing opportunities. I know there has been concern about the rush, but at this point, we're sort of again, at a milestone where we're now taking another 6 months. We will have worked on this project for almost 18 months, you know, to get to this code. So we're hopeful, and I'm hoping that, you know, we've provided opportunity for folks to participate either through sort of the earlier stage to this point, and now through this next stage of work sessions and public hearings. So I know I guess folks do think that it's rushed, but it's 6 months early. It's not, you know, and there are multiple communities that are in the same boat that we are, that are working forward with this process now to try to get going on this and to get their codes adopted so that they can move forward with these housing opportunities. So we're certainly not trying to steamroll anything, but we are moving forward diligently to have the code in place before the deadline if we can. So we're trying to incorporate as much public comment and public participation as we can. And I'm happy to hear, or I'm happy to get feedback on how else we can be doing that as we move forward over the next 6 months. So I hope I've answered your question. I know it's a lot, and we're trying really hard to kind of help people participate in this with us.
Thank you. Do any other commissioners have any other comments that they'd like to make or questions for Vera? Commissioner Edge.
Yeah, so it looks from that one slide where we're interested in reducing the minimum lot size for standalone single family or single unit dwelling and duplex to 3,000 square feet, right? Okay, so that's cool. And then I still want to see us be a little bit more aggressive with that, but we'll have opportunities to talk about that, obviously. The other question I had is in terms of the rezoning, or the changing of the zoning designations for the low density zones, medium and low density zones. How is that going to impact land divisions, and are you bringing any land division amendments, or is there are we going to get any direction on how land divisions interact with these new zones? Before we get to the kind of the seeing draft code part of this.
If I may, land divisions will be, people will still be able to do land division. And the way the subdivision, or the way we are looking at Title 17. Let me back it up. So yes, we are looking at Title 17 and what kinds of changes need to happen. That there will be probably additional changes to Title 17. At this point, we're sort of in some ways focused on House Bill 2001 compliance for this milestone piece of code. And then we'll still be tweaking Title 17 to make sure that we've got everything is communicating properly between sections. We're basically touching almost every section of the code with this in one way, shape, or form. And there are questions about kind of how does land division, work? Particularly, as recently as I think it was 2 weeks ago, Senate Bill 458 was signed into law that requires expedited land division for middle housing projects. So that just happened, and that needs to be in place by June 30th of 2022 as well. So we've got all kinds of things that the state is telling us to kind of keep up with. So Title 17 code will be part of this, all of this, to make sure that it's consistent. But generally, you're right with, consolidating zones. Minimum lot size is really based on the housing type. So it's still, to some degree, a land division can come forward with 5,000 square foot lots, but they'll still need to meet, all of our land division requirements, but it's going to be about what they get to build on it. So you're right, can a subdivision, if this is where you're going with, 3,000 square foot lots, it's possible, but they'll still need to meet.
In a neighborhood that is, in a neighborhood that's R10 today, could get a subdivision of 3,000 square foot lots, next year. And that's fine. I just want to make sure that we know that we're considering how that works, and that we're not putting ourselves in many weird situations where we need weird variances for things that could be foreseen and all that. So
great questions. No, absolutely. And that's what the summer is going to be for, is to kind of find all of these little things so that we can get it all baked in the fall, for sure. Yep. Great question.
Do any other commissioners have questions for Vera? Vera, thank you again for providing a summary. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
It's going to be a busy summer.
Yes, it is.
So we'll strap in and hold on. I'm going to move on then to other business. Do commissioners or staff have other business that they'd like to present? I can't see any hands raised. So I'll move on. Do commissioners have other items for discussion? Are we really going to break with Commissioner Humer?
I don't know when to do this, but I do have a commercial. because we're not
This
meeting.
is our commercial break. Yep. 'cause
Okay, all right.
Next
So
is
here-
future meetings.
All right, here we go.
Performances at
So,
the museum.
Milwaukee Museum and Two Sisters Play Cafe with Professional Fools Productions are proud to present Performance at the Museum, July 10th, with two shows starting at 1:30 and 3:30 p.m. They'll be on the back lawn of the Milwaukee Museum, located at 3737 Southeast Adams Street. Please bring a blanket and lawn or a lawn chair. Admission is free, but please feel free to tip the performer. And by the way, it is Juggle Mania. This guy is actually world famous. He was at the Tokyo Games, the Winter Games, look him up. His name is Rise Thomas, and it's a Pixar-like comedy where everybody has fun regardless of age, politics, and pretension. So come on down, July 10th. We're going to be doing this on every second Saturday of the month during the summer. A different performer in August and September. But bring your kids. This is meant to be kids. COVID stuff is, will be going on. So no face mask required outside, but please practice social distancing. And we will have to take your name just in case if there is a COVID outbreak. So at any rate, come on down to the museum. On that Saturday, the museum will be open as well. So if you just want to drop off the kiddies and go wander around the museum, you're more than welcome to. So there you have it.
That's great. I
All
love
right,
that you're pairing with Two Sisters Cafe. That's right next to my house.
They, I think they might be giving away free snow cones or coupons for free snow cones. So be well worth it for you to come on.
Perfect. Okay, anybody else? No, okay. Laura, future meetings?
Yep. Okay, great. So June 22nd, we do not have a meeting scheduled. So 2 weeks from now, no meeting. And then right now we've just got the Vera show in July. So like she promised, it's Vera all summer long, all the time. And we do have some other things working through our system now. So you'll probably get Kellogg at some point during the summer. And that's what I've got for now. Oh, the other thing I wanted to say is that regarding the joint meeting with the NDAs, I've proposed a bunch of different times and I've been having a very difficult time, and there's just a lot of folks that aren't meeting during the summer anyway. So the idea is I talked to Chair Losfeld and Commissioner Edge about it, and I think that based on summer vacations and conflicts, that we should move the date into September, and I hope that's okay with everybody. I just want to give the neighborhood associations, the NDAs, the time to look at the agenda and actually talk about it before they come to the meeting in September. So if I kind of give them a couple of months, then hopefully they will all have had a chance to meet before September. So if that's okay with everybody, I am going to go with a September date.
If that is the case, Laura, I would suggest maybe October, because generally they'll start meeting in September, and the Ardenwald is the fourth Monday of September. So if you do it in September, then and the Island Station is like the third Wednesday or something. So they may not have enough chance to be able to meet before that. So maybe October is a better date so that all the NDAs will hit through. Just a suggestion.
Okay, yeah, and I'll look at that and I'll look at the dates. And we also talked about next year being very intentional about when we're holding these meetings at the beginning of the year so that we don't run into the summer situation again. So we're thinking that possibly we would have a meeting in May. Like, let's just get that on the books in our minds in May of 2022, because that's after we'll have, if there are any new planning commissioners, and hopefully after elections with the NDA, so we can be very intentional about when we're doing this every year. So we don't kind of go through this ritual that we've gone through this year, although it's been an interesting year. It's just posed some challenges for us. So yes, I will take that advice. I will look at the calendar, September, October, which works best, and then hopefully we'll get this on the schedule just ongoing starting in May next year.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, then I'll move to adjourn.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Good night.
Have a great
Thank
week.
you.